Hi there, welcome back. We are going to continue on with our ELA mini lessons, and we're going to talk about genre features today. So go ahead and grab your text and your packets, and we're going to get started, and here we go. All right, before we get into the actual lesson or focus skill of genre features, what we're going to do is we're going to read our text. A lot of the times what really helps us kind of focus our mind into ELA is going back and rereading it, just reading through it without any focus on the lesson. So please go and read page 6, 7, 8, 9. Pause this video, go back and reread it. I'm even going to go back and reread it. So let's go. Get started, please. All right, you guys, I even went back and reread my text, so you definitely should have too. If you have not, pause this video, go back and reread it. I promise you, the more you read and the more you keep rereading through it, the better you're gonna be. So now we're gonna get started with our actual lesson. Here we go. Okay, so we kind of already did a pre-read of this text where we looked at the different text features. We looked at the title and the different photographs and graphs and items like that in our text. And one aspect that we talked about is it's an informational science text. So we're going to talk about what makes this an informational science text, not even looking at the text features, the pictures, the graphs, all that stuff. We're going to look at the genre features. So here we go. When we're looking at the genre features, what we're doing is we're looking at the text itself. So we're only going to be analyzing the paragraphs of each event, and we're going to find all of these things in these paragraphs to kind of prove that it is an informational text. So before we actually go and find them, what we need to do is kind of define what the genre features are of an informational text. So number one is where they use examples. Pretty self-explanatory. These are some sentence stems where it starts in an example. For example, such as, like, which is. So when they list something, they use examples to kind of further the information of the text. So genre feature number one for an informational science text is using examples. Okay, and number two is using simple present tense. So this is in the structure of the sentences. Simple present tense means that they're telling actions that is happening right now. So they're not talking about things that happened in the past, and they're not talking about future. What they're doing is using verbs and words that are happening right now. We are walking, we are running, we are typing, we are listening. These are things that are happening right now as opposed to in the past, ed, or in the future, will. All right? So in our text, we should see examples, number one, and we should see simple present tense, meaning they should be talking about things right now. The third genre feature that we're going to talk about is adjectives. So adjectives are describing words. So they need to be, in an informational science text, they need to be describing things. Describing color, describing size, describing shape, or just describing what something is in this in the paragraphs of the text. All right, now we're on number 4, which is using comparative adjectives and adverbs. So adjectives and adverbs are describing words, but when you turn it into comparative, what you're doing is you are comparing two things, and typically what we see is we find adding ER to the words. So we have larger or taller. So adding ER makes one of the items taller or larger than the other. You're comparing it to something else. So that's where the comparative adjectives go beyond just describing words, but describing words, comparing it to something else. And last but not least, we have comparing unfamiliar objects to familiar things. So this is where you see unknown words or items in your text, and what they'll do is they'll add in a comparison. They'll add in something similar that you can compare to in order for you to truly understand what the word is. So remember, an informational text is there to teach you about the text. So by following this genre feature, comparing unfamiliar things, you're able to learn a new word, but compare it and have a reference to an old word that you can know to kind of help that association. Okay, so the 5 genre features of the informational text that we're talking about is using examples, using simple present tense, adjectives, comparative adjectives and adverbs, and comparing unfamiliar things to familiar things. So remember, what we're doing is we're talking about an informational science text, and genre features are things that we find in the informational text paragraphs, okay? So we're looking for specific items that tell us that it's an informational science text. All right, so we are going to turn to our homeschool work packet page to this graphic organizer, and we're gonna set the purpose and read the directions. So it says, reread Earth's weather and climate and look for examples of each genre feature. Annotate the text and then complete the chart below. Okay, so we already talked about all the different genre features, kind of what they look like. So we're gonna go find examples in our informational text. So let's go. So the first genre feature that we're gonna look for right now is using examples. So turn to page 6, put your finger on paragraph 1, and we are going to look for examples. So let's read paragraph 1 together. What is the weather like right now? Weather describes the atmosphere's conditions in a certain place at a given moment in time. Climate is different. Climate describes the average weather patterns of that place over long periods of time. Climate describes the average weather of the seasons. It also describes possible weather extremes like tornadoes, hurricanes, droughts, or rainy periods. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I see an example. I see an example because I see the word. It says it also describes possible weather extremes like. Remember, that is kind of a signal word that tells you that it's going to list examples. After like, it has tornadoes, comma, hurricanes, comma, droughts, comma, or rainy periods. So right there, they're listing out a bunch of examples of weather extremes. They're using examples. So we are right here in our text, like tornadoes, hurricanes, droughts, or rainy periods. So on your graphic organizer, go ahead for the genre feature using examples, copy down that sentence, like tornadoes, hurricanes, droughts, or rainy periods. Okay, so we already found an example, and you wrote down the example. It's like tornadoes, hurricanes, droughts, or rainy periods. The next one we're going to do is look for simple present tense. So remember, simple present tense is tell actions that are happening right now. So go ahead and put your finger on that last sentence that we were at, and we're going to continue reading. It says, weather can change from minute to minute, hour to hour, and day to day. Climate is determined by tracking a region's weather pattern for decades. Okay, so when we're looking for simple present tense, what we're doing is we're looking for the verbs of the sentence to make sure that it's present tense. So weather can, underline can, that's happening right now, change from minute to minute, hour, day to day. Climate is determined by tracking a region's weather. I'm going to go on to paragraph 2. How do scientists track these weather? Scientists measure different weather features. Underline the word measure. These are happening right now. They didn't measured, not measured or will measure. It's happening right now. They measure the temperature, which is. Okay, so I have underlined a couple of verbs. I've underlined can, is, measure, is. These are all examples of using simple present tense. So for simple present tense, just write down a couple of verbs that you found that show that it's simple present tense there in the now. So go ahead and write those down. Okay, the next one on our list is adjectives. So what I want to actually do is take your text and turn to page 8. We're going to find some adjectives in paragraph number 3. So we're going to read and look for adjectives. Adjectives are describing words, and go ahead and underline, highlight, or circle them. So it says some climates are hot and rainy. I'm going to underline hot, and I'm going to underline rainy. Others tend to be cold and dry. All right, those are more adjectives. They're describing the different climates. So on your graphic organizer, go to where it says adjectives and write those down. We have hot, rainy, cold, and dry. Go write them down. After you've added the adjectives, what we're going to do is get into the comparative adjectives and adverbs. So remember, this important part right here is they typically end in ER. So what we're doing is we're taking describing words that end in ER in order to compare them. So I am right here in paragraph 3, it says for. For example, regions closer to the equator received more direct sunlight. I'm going to underline that word closer. We're comparing the different regions in the story or in the text. As a result, they tend to be warmer, ER, warmer. Some is warmer than others. That's comparing two different areas. Places closer to water have more moisture and humidity in the air. As a result, they tend to have more rainfall. Okay, so we found two comparative adjectives and adverbs in paragraph 3. We found closer and we found warmer. So go to your graphic organizer, and for evidence from the text, we found closer and warmer. Write that down on the lines. Okay, what we're actually going to do for the last one, where it's comparing unfamiliar objects to familiar things, is we're going to turn back to page 6 and go to paragraph 1. Paragraph 1 starts off by asking, what is the weather like right now? I know what weather is. I can look outside and say that it's sunny, it's warm, there's no clouds in the sky, things like that. I know what weather is. We're going to keep reading. Then it says weather describes the atmosphere's conditions of a certain place at a given moment in time. Describing weather. But I already know what weather is. It's not really unfamiliar to me. Climate is different. I think climate is a new word for us. So we're going to continue reading. It says climate describes the average weather patterns of the place over long periods of time. So what is happening here is the author is taking the word climate and using climate, an unfamiliar word, and using a familiar word, weather, to describe what it is. So it says climate describes the average weather pattern over long periods of time. So it's taking the word weather that we know and applying it to the definition. We're comparing something that we don't know to something that we do know. So for your graphic organizer, comparing unfamiliar objects to familiar things, we're going to copy down that sentence. We're going to copy climate describes the average weather patterns of the place over long periods of time. Go ahead and do that now. And last but not least, we are going to read the question on the bottom and answer it. So it says, which two sentences from the passage describe a type of cloud? So read over those, find 2 of them, and circle the answers. Go do that now, please. Thank you for checking in. Hope this video helps you with genre features. See you next time. Bye.